for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock.
Welcome to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. My name is Clayton Craddock, and this is your one-stop shop for everything you'll need to know about playing drums for Broadway musicals. My guest today on the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast is Quinton Robinson. Better known as Q, he's been on tour with people such as Peebo Bryson, Avery Sunshine, Anthony David, Bobby Brown, and he's going to be going out on tour in my show, Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. I'm honored to have him as a guest on my podcast. He has a lot of great things to share with you today, and without further ado, we're going to get right into the conversation. Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. This is Clayton Craddock, and I'm here with Quinton Robinson. Fantastic drummer. I've known him, for about a year and a half, 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's been a longer time than that because I've had many great conversations with him. I've seen him play. He's amazing, and I'm glad to have him on my podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, Quinton Robinson.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Glad you're with me. I have so many questions to ask in such a short period of time, and I want to get right to it. First of all, how did you get involved in playing drums? What was the thing that made you say, you know what, I want to play drums for a living?
That's a very it's an interesting question. I didn't pick playing drums. I kind of feel like drums picked me. I've been playing drums since I was 3 years old.
Really?
Yeah. My mother tells a story. I grew up in church. Watching my uncles play drums, not professionally, but just in a store for a church. And my uncle was late one night, and my mother said I crawled down on my grandmother's lap, sat behind a drum set, and I started playing. And she basically said church stopped for maybe about 5 minutes because they didn't realize what was going on. And, the rest is history. From there, I was the drummer at the church, and my uncle switched to guitar, and that was that. I didn't start getting serious about drums maybe until my junior or senior year in high school, when I started looking at what I wanted to do after graduation. And I got offered a scholarship to go to the University of Miami, and I took it.
Where'd you grow up, by the way?
Miami, born and raised in Miami, Florida.
What part?
Most of my formative years were in Miami Shores, which is right down the street from Barry University. At one point, it used to be called unincorporated Dade, but it's right between Liberty City and North Miami Beach.
Okay.
Maybe about 20 minutes from the beach. Maybe about 30 minutes north of Broward. So just kind of right in the middle, maybe 15 minutes away from downtown.
You still have a lot of family down there?
All of my family is down there.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's still down there. I'm the only one that decided to move away and go to Atlanta.
So you graduated high school and you went to where again?
University of Miami.
And you studied drums there?
Yes. Well, eventually. My initial major going in was music therapy, but in order to keep my scholarship, I had to be a part of some different performing ensembles. But then I got an opportunity to go on tour. So I took a year off, went on tour, and when I came back, music therapy was the furthest thing away from my mind. I wanted to play drums all of the time, and I switched my major to music performance.
No, wait, what's music therapy?
Oh, wow, man. So there are two different sides of it. There's the therapy part where music is healing. So, you'll use music therapy for mentally challenged individuals or older people, like anything drum circle type is a type of therapy. You'll also have a commercial side of music therapy If you ever go into a department store and the tint of the light is different, or the walls are a particular color, the music is playing at a certain decibel level, it is all to appeal to the senses to, buy something that's on sale or spend money. Even when you go into your schools or your jail cells, your penitentiaries, the colors on the wall are all a part of music therapy. You typically would see pastel colors on those walls because those emit cooler vibes, and it soothes the soul, as opposed to colors like black, red, and green, which kind of makes people aggressive.
What's wrong with red, black, and green, man?
Hey, man, I didn't make the rules, man.
Anyway.
Red, black.
So you finally picked up on that.
Oh my God. It's going to be that type of podcast. All right. Rack them up and let's play.
Yeah. So you said you came back from the tour. Who'd you go on tour with?
Oh, man. So I went to this guy named Barry Ivan White. Barry Ivan White he sang with the Platters for 20 years. And I got a chance to do a European tour with him. And when I came back, I didn't want to do anything else.
So what school was it again?
University of Miami. The Hurricanes, man. Look, you can't forget that building. Okay. So and when I was there, we were winning a lot of football games.
So the University of Miami is they have the U. The
U. That's the U, baby.
Okay.
How you know the nickname and not the school name?
There's University of Florida. That's the Gators, right?
No, we don't talk about those waterfish. We definitely don't talk about those Indians and Seminoles. No.
Oh, dang.
No.
That's Florida State? No, that's
Florida State.
Oh, okay.
No.
Damn. Did you play in the marching band at all in high school?
I did.
What'd you play?
Snare. I was a snare. I was
captain.
Say it again.
Were you the captain?
I was the drum section leader for a year or two.
Okay.
They wouldn't let underclassmen be section leaders. So, you had to just kind of go up through the ranks. But coming from a traditional high school marching band, you had your freshman chair or your freshman section leader. So we ran maybe about 16 snares deep. So, oh yeah.
That's amazing.
We were the school I went to a couple of high schools, but the school where I was really into marching band was Miami Northwestern, and it was a feeder basically into Florida A&M University. So a lot of the FAMU kids would come back. We had a lot of influence from FAMU, so they had a big line, so we had a big line, and we patterned ourselves out of them. But when I got to college, I marched, but it was a different thing. It was corps style.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally spent a year on cymbals because I had to, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in marching band.
Really?
Those cymbals are 24 inches.
Ooh.
You got to sit up there, you got to flip them, and you got to turn them, and you got to hold your hands up, and it's a lot. So your upper body strength, your shoulders shaking, and you're doing that. But the reason why I couldn't play snare is because although I knew all of my rudiments and I could read, it was just a different style of playing, where in traditional or shore band, you went to Howard, so I'm pretty sure you get it. Everything was about the show. Core or drum core is more about precision. So not pulling focus, even if you moved your elbow out a little bit while you're doing a double stroke roll, you'll get called on that. So it was more about precision as opposed to the actual show of it all. So
you went out on tour with Barry White.
Barry Ivan White.
I know. I was just joking with you. And you came back and you're like, you know what? This is all I want to do now. Mm-hmm. And did that mean you left college, or what did you do after that?
Oh, I just started taking my applied percussion classes a bit more serious. um, being growing up so young, playing drums all your life, being the best drummer everywhere you go, elementary school, middle school, high school, you tend to get the sense of self-entitlement, and, you think it's a couple of things. You're a teenager and then you're good at something. So, you put those two things together, you get a really inflated ego. And I kind of felt there was a waste of time. It's like, these guys can't teach me anything. I wasn't listening. I was doing enough just to get the grade. And when I came back, I ran into just some amazing instructors, and they challenged me. And that was the biggest thing. I had never been challenged before. Not to mention my other peers that were there. Like, I went to school with Ludwig Alphonse, who used to play with Spyro Gyra. He's back down in Miami now, but he used to be in New York for a while. Played with Spyro Gyra, played with Eldar. So we were literally kind of like frenemies. We were always paired together. If we had to do a performance, it was Q and Ludwig and Q. So he pushed me a lot, and my teachers challenged me because they wouldn't allow me to do things that I was good at. They like, oh no, we're not playing that today. Pull out these jazz charts. Let's talk about some fusion. I know you know how to play in 4. Let's play in 7 today. So
you finished at the University of Miami. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just joking with you.
I know. Don't do that, man.
You gotta hit the end button on this now.
Hey, man, listen. This is where I draw the line. I draw the line. Good friends to go to Florida. I grew up as a University of Miami fan. Like anybody, whatever your dad is into, that's what you're into. And my dad was a huge University of Miami fan. And when I went to school there, from a fan perspective, I enjoyed it simply because we were winning championships the years I was there. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
But yeah, I graduated in 2003. But I want to say from 99 to 2003, we were in national championship contention every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Must have been a great time, and being in the band and being around all those people. I mean, I always wonder what it was like going to a big school like that.
It's not a big school though.
Really? I mean, really? It's
a private institution.
Okay.
It's not a state school. Enrollment when I was there was maybe about 20,000 kids.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a private institution, but because the athletic program, specifically the football team, was so great, they just had a lot of notoriety and a lot of money because they were on television primetime games like every week at that time.
Right. So you got out in 2003. What did you do right after that?
What did I do? Oh, I got married. That didn't work. So we're going to leave that there. But I continued to kind of build my career. I was playing at this church and they paid pretty well. So, I had a kind of built in every 2-week gig. And I kind of felt like I wanted to do more. So then I got into education. Started off as assistant band director at a school in Miami, Michael Crop Senior High. I did that for a couple of years. And then because having Black men in the school system, they were so scarce, my principal said, oh, you have a degree. You're here every day anyway. Why don't I just pay you as a substitute teacher? You show up here every day. And when you need to miss, you can still miss. You just won't get paid for those days. So I did that. And I followed her to the next school she went to. And unfortunately, one of her teachers, a math teacher, fell down, broke her hip, and then I was in that classroom. Math has always been one of those subjects that stuck with me. So I started teaching in the class, and they took a practice state test, and those students did very well on the test. And she made me take the math teacher certification test.
Oh, wow.
Took the certification test, and then I became a math teacher. So I taught math. Then she switched schools again, and I went with her simply because anytime I needed to miss for music, I could.
Okay.
So then I taught high school math from 06 to 09. And that was the end of education for me.
And why is that? You went on tour? Or what
No. So she was pushing me to become a assistant principal. And you needed 5-year prerequisite to become assistant principal is that you need 5 years in the classroom. And I was coming up on that 5th year, and she was having me make bell schedules and, handle different things for the school, go and represent the school at different functions. And I kind of felt, and at the same time, while I was doing that, my music career started taking off. I started playing with more artists, started getting calls for more sessions. So those things started overshadowing the teaching thing. And I was like, well, you know what? If I stay on this path, in 3 years, I'll be a principal, and I'll be super miserable. So I decided to step out on faith and just do music full time.
That's great.
And it's been the best decision that I've ever made. There's been some highs and lows, but I wouldn't, if I had to do it all over again, I would make the same decision.
So you left education and you decided to just play full time.
Yes.
Did you move to Atlanta after that, or were you teaching in Florida?
After I stopped teaching in 09, I moved to Atlanta in 2010. I had the opportunity. I had a friend of mine who is a really big time producer, and he connected me with some management people for a very well-known recording artist, and I put a show together for her. Came up to Atlanta and presented it to her, and they were ecstatic. Like, the management was ecstatic. I was gonna be her music director, and that was gonna be the beginning. And I don't know, maybe 6 months after that meeting, she fired the entire management team, and every decision that came with that management team actually went out the window. But I think for me, if it wasn't for that meeting, and to know that was almost kind of like a confidence thing, like, hey, Q, you know what? You can do this at a high level. You just got to go to where the work is. And Atlanta was the biggest and closest industry city that I could get to. New York just seemed daunting, and LA was just so far away. So I settled on Atlanta, and I moved up here. I was like, well, that didn't work out, but I think I have the wherewithal to kind of make it. And I moved up here, and just started trying to build my career from there.
So who was the first act that you'd say kind of broke you into and moved you up to another level? I know you played with a bunch of different people, but was there one artist that you said, okay, now I think I've quote unquote made it? I'm
not there yet. It's one of those things, right. a perpetual chase, right? I won't say that it was a particular artist, but what I will say is that when the level of respect my name started to get in the industry, particularly in Atlanta, when those things started changing, it didn't necessarily make me feel like I made it, but I knew I was on the right track. Not necessarily having to jump through hoops to get decisions made. If I said yes, it was done. People working around my schedule, because, as musicians, it's almost kind of like one of those take it or leave it things. It's like, hey, can you do this? No, I can't. I'm busy. Oh, well, anyway, I'll find someone else. But when people are like, okay, well, when can you make it? Well, so that's when I started saying, okay, well, I'm doing something right. I don't think I'll ever say I made it, because, excellence is not necessarily a destination. I believe it is a lifestyle. And the minute you stop climbing is kind of when you start declining. So I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I say I made it, but I do believe I'm on the right track.
Who were some of your influences musically as you were growing up in the 2000s?
Oh man,
or before?
So I'll keep it to drummers. We're drummers, so I'll keep it to drummers. Four names that always, I call them counterpoints. Those influences are counterpoints. I'm getting to you, man.
I'm just joking.
I'm getting to you. You're later. You said the early 2000s. This is a long time. We got some time.
I was pointing to myself for the people that are listening. I'm just joking.
He actually wrote that on the. Hey, I'm going to ask you these questions.
Yeah, I said, who are your favorite drummers other than me?
Other than me.
I don't have that ego. I'm just joking, everybody.
No, Clayton's a great drummer, but we'll get into that a little bit later. We'll fluff his ego a little later in this podcast. Let me see. I'll start locally. So there's James Davis. James Davis, I'll just give you a quick little blurb. James Davis was like the most prominent drummer in the Miami area at the time. He was my Dennis Chambers. He was the closest thing to Dennis Chambers that I saw, but he was also as lightning fast as his hands were. He was also the guy that I always saw. Like, I saw the Questlove kit before I knew who Questlove was, because James Davis would come into a gospel church, a musical, kick, snare, and hat, and just lay it down. So James Davis, Jody Hill and James were kind of like, they came up together, but it's kind of like they were the guys in Miami. And Jody spent years playing behind Casey and the Sunshine Band. The things that I learned from Jody was not about not taking yourself so serious. He has such a huge personality, and he allows that to come out when he plays. He's also one of the first guys that won the drum off from Guitar Center way back in the day. So just kind of letting you know, that's before it got all watered down and all that stuff. But he was, I think, year 2 or year 3 of the drum off. He went all the way to nationals. And then we have Jonathan Joseph. Jonathan Joseph was the guy, and when I was in undergrad, the one that kicked my butt every single day. If I did something right, he yelled at me to do it better. If I did something wrong, he never yelled, but he just had a way of just making you feel like crap. So Jonathan also was the person that introduced me to jazz music. Growing up in my home, it was a very sheltered house. I was only playing to gospel music. The Winans, the Hawkins, Mahalia Jackson, and the Mighty Clouds of Joy. Those are the only things that were allowed to be played in the house, which is great music, but I had no idea of the other side. When I got to undergrad, Jonathan Joseph was the guy that introduced me to the Yellow Jackets. And that's when things just kind of, and at that time, Will Kennedy had left the Yellow Jackets, and they were between drummers. So Jonathan Joseph was one of the drummers that they were using. So he was playing between the Yellow Jackets and Pat Metheny. So this guy he's currently playing with Jeff Beck. So he's all world. And he's now one of the leading authorities when it comes to Afro drumming and independence. He has books out sanctioned by DCI, and he's just an amazing drummer. So that kind of takes me through my formative years, and then I have a lot of colleagues that I look up to, like Calvin Rogers, who's one of gospel's best drummers. There's not a gospel session in the past 15 years that he hasn't played on. And then Terry Baker. Terry Baker is the session king. Ted Baker is currently playing with Kirk Franklin. He's been doing that gig for I don't know how long. But Terry was the reason why I got into live recording and understanding how to become a recording drummer versus a show drummer. So those were my influences in 2000s. I can go through a list, but those were the counterpoints of not people that I just met, but people that actually took time to impart knowledge to me growing up. But like there are millions of guys. I learned something from every drummer out there, young or old.
When did you start playing with artists like Peabo Bryson and Anthony David and Avery Sunshine and Bobby Brown?
Okay, so in chronological order, Anthony David, 2012, Peabo Bryson, 2014, Avery, 2015, and Bobby in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you basically, did you play on any of these people's records, or is it more of the touring
Anthony
group?
Anthony David and Avery, I've played on maybe respectively their past 3 or 4 albums. Peabo literally just released a record maybe 2 years ago. Bobby hasn't released new music, and he doesn't have to. Like Peabo and Bobby never have to release another song, and they will tour forever simply because they're legacy artists. Excuse me. So,
how'd you connect with Peabo?
There's a drummer here by the name of Jarrell Flynn who I've been doing that gig for quite a while, and he had some conflicts or whatever, scheduling conflicts, and he called me up just like super random. Hey man, what are you doing in the next couple of weeks? I was like, I don't have anything. And he was like, well, I got this gig I want you to do, and I'm gonna put you in contact with the music director. Music director calls me and says, yeah, just go on YouTube. We'll run the songs. I'm sending you the charts and we'll run the songs at soundcheck. So I didn't get a rehearsal. And my first gig was a 120-minute show in the Grand Bahamas, in front of maybe about 5,000 people with Peabo Bryson. Never met anybody from the band until I touched down in the Bahamas. And I literally had to play pretty much his entire catalog with no rehearsal. Trial by fire, man.
Exactly. Was he, I guess he's pretty easy to work with.
So his reputation definitely precedes him as far as drummers. He's very critical on drummers. Very hard on drummers. I slipped through the cracks. So he's always been very complimentary of my playing, and we always have a good time when I get a chance to play with him. So
what does he look for that other people might have found to be very difficult or challenging?
Playing the songs, playing the music, allowing yourself to become what that music is and not making it something that it's not. I think a lot of times you'll find drummers or musicians in general that will try to put their spin on music. And you're talking about Mr. Disney. Nobody wants to hear my interpretation of what those drum fills should have been in A Whole New World. People want to hear the record. Like it's Disney, his songs are iconic. So you have to let ego die, and you have to play those songs as they were meant to be played. So I take that into every situation, but particularly the Peabo situation, just allowing the music to win out. And that works. And not being afraid to hit the drums. Like he likes a drummer that can smack the drums.
One of my favorite songs of his is I'm So Into You.
Mm-hmm.
That was my song back in the day. I don't know if you guys do that.
We do. We do. The funny thing about that song, my favorite is probably Feel the Fire. But
that too.
I'm So Into You has a very specific drum pattern And so usually we'll do I'm So Into You and we'll go into Feel the Fire.
Okay.
And if you listen to the original recording, you'll hear there's a gliss on the ride bell.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that gliss on the ride bell, the entire song is ruined.
Really?
It is a signature part of that song.
I'm gonna listen to that again. And
yeah, so it's right in with the little bell thing at the top. You know, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, like he's very keen on what his music should sound like, and when that is not there, it pulls his focus.
Yeah. I get
not
that.
to mention he plays guitar.
Okay. So he knows exactly what he's looking for, and when you give it to him, then he's satisfied, which is very important when it comes to the topic of this podcast, Broadway drumming, or drumming in general. You know, I have talked to other drummers for this podcast, and you know, they basically say, you know, I'm not necessarily a Broadway drummer. I'm a drummer who plays musicals. And that's kind of how both have come to this as musicians who play all kinds of music. You come from a certain style and era, and I come from a certain style and era, but we understand how to play musically and what people are looking for, and how to keep your ego out of it, because people are looking for a musician to play music. And of course, you know, they put the music with the choreography and lighting and everything else, but you're there to play a part. And just like Peebo's looking for that bliss, some dancer might be, you know, the choreographer might be looking for a specific drum hit. And if that's not there, if you don't go plat-toot in the right place, everything else can go wrong. So it's the same kind of concept, but a lot of people don't understand that. And I like to emphasize that, which brings me to the fact that you've done all this other kind of stuff in the past, from marching band, show marching bands, to core style marching bands, to going on tours, to playing with different people, to getting mentored by jazz musicians and gospel musicians. What makes you want to play Broadway? Thank you for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. My name is Clayton Craddock, and you've been listening to my interview with Q Robinson, the drummer for the first national tour of Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. In part 2 of our conversation, we're going to be discussing how his love for musical theater as an actor led him to become a drummer in many musical theater productions. We're also going to be talking about how he landed the gig as the drummer for the tour of Ain't Too Proud. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you like what you hear, give us a good rating and review. Stay tuned.